Hi everybody, my name is Abdurrahman Al-Banna, your physics teacher. We have to revise some info from what we have learned in Prep 3 that we need to know before we start our curriculum in Secondary 1 Physics curriculum. Starting by knowing what about talking about motion. Motion is changing your position from one position to another. So motion has a types which are transmission type and periodic type. If we are talking about the transmission type, you have to know that transmission means that you have to change your position. Changing your position from a start point to end point differ from each other. So you are making a transmission motion. It's a condition to make a transmission motion that the start and the end are differing from each other. While the periodic, we have to know that you start from a point and make a rotation which end in the same point. So you have to know that the start point and the end point are the same. You have to know that periodic motion is called periodic as it repeated in a period of time, in a constant period of time or a constant interval of time. Properties of motion that you have to know that start by speed. Speed having a symbol v, which indicate velocity. But you have to know that there is a difference between speed and velocity, as speed as a scalar, while the velocity is a vector. Velocity has a factors, or speed has a factors, which are distance and time. You have to know that the law of the speed is distance per time or distance over time. If we are talking about the graphical representation, about the relation between the speed and the distance, you have to know the speed and the distance are directly proportional. So the relation between them is a straight line relation, has a constant angle with an x-axis. The constant angle with x-axis indicates that the slope, which is tan theta, is a constant. The slope has a value and a name. In our curriculum, you have to know that the slope has a value and a name. Value of the slope is the value on the y-axis per the value on the x-axis. Here in this graphical representation, the slope is y over x or v over d, which equate with 1 over t, reciprocal of the time. But when we talk about the relation between the speed and the time are inversely proportional, or speed is directly proportional with the reciprocal of the time. So if we are talking between speed and time, it's a curve relation, indicate that they are inverse to each other. But when we are talking between speed and the reciprocal of the time, it's a direct relation. When the speed is inverse with the time, it's direct with the reciprocal of the time. So it's a direct relation, straight line relation, has an angle with an x-axis. We can get the slope, which is equal to tan theta as a value. But while we talking about the value, you have to know that it has a name. Its name is by putting the y-axis per the x-axis, or speed per reciprocal time, which is equal speed by time, which is equal distance. You have to know that there is a types of the graphical representation that you have to know. As an example, if we are taking an example between a graphical representation, represents the relation between distance and time, starting from point A until reaching to point E. Starting by point A to B, you have to know that it's a curve relation. In this curve relation, the angle with the x-axis is increasing. By taking a point 1 and point 2, you have to know that a tangent, when made at point 1, it has theta 1, while making a tangent at point 2, it made theta 2, and theta 2 or angle 2 is larger than angle 1. So tan at angle 2 is larger than angle 1. Tan at angle 1, tan is theta, which has the value of the slope. So the slope at point 2 will larger than at point 1. The slope is by putting the y-axis on the x-axis, or the y-axis bear the x-axis. So d over t, which indicates slope is speed. Slope has a name and a value. The slope is by putting a ratio between y per x. D per time, so speed. So by returning to this point, if we say that slope at the point 2 is larger than the slope at the point 1, so the speed at the point 2 is larger than speed at the point 1, so the speed increase or the slope increase by time. So if we have a curve in this way or in this pattern, you have to know that the speed increase by time or slope increase by time. By taking point B to C, theta is constant as a straight line relation, so tan theta is constant, so slope, which is indicates speed, is constant. By taking another point from C to D, also its theta is constant, tan theta is constant, slope, which is indicated speed, is constant. But by comparing second case with the third case, you see that angle 1 is larger than angle 2 by looking with your naked eye. So speed 1 akbar or larger than speed 2, by notice that the theta larger than theta, so tan theta 1 is larger than tan theta 2, and speed 1 is larger than speed 2. By indicating point D to E, you notice that by making a tangent at point 1 having a theta 1 and making a tangent at point 2 having a theta 2, theta 1 is larger than theta 2, so tan is theta 1, tan angle 1 is larger than tan angle 2, so slope at the point 1 is larger than slope at the point 2, so speed at the point 1 larger than speed at the point 2. By going from point 1 to point 2, speed decrease or the slope decrease. So when we are talking at a curve by this way, you have to know that the slope or the speed decrease. By taking an example to compare between a distance and displacement from moving from point A, starting by A till reaching C. From A to B, if we are talking about the distance, you have two parts. The first part is called part 1 in the red point, which is indicate the radius, and second part indicate quarter of the circumference. So when we are about the when talking about the distance is the radius plus quarter of the circumference. While we are talking about the displacement, you have to know that the displacement is the shortest distance. So from A to B, it indicates a radius. So displacement at this point is indicating the radius. By talking from the whole motion from A to C, the distance is 3 parts. Part 1 in the black is a radius. Part 2 is 3/4 circumference. Part 3 half a radius. But by talking about the displacement between A and C, it's half a radius. Between A and C, it's half a radius. So thank you about your attention. and we will continue our lessons or our instructions about our curriculum by starting a new year.